everybody. Welcome to our podcast, Optimal You, the Next Generation in Holistic Healthcare. I'm your host, Dr. Alexis Romero. I'm a chiropractic physician with board certifications in functional medicine and clinical nutrition. You'll be hearing from me along with my husband and business partner, Dr. Thomas Romero. He's specialized in clinical neurology and electrodiagnostics. We'll also be hosting a variety of guests in the fields of medicine, integrative and traditional medicine, getting all different viewpoints on many different conditions and types of treatments. We own a practice in Ponte Vedra Beach called Optimal You Wellness Center. You can find us on socials, Instagram at OY Wellness and Facebook, Optimal You Wellness Center. We welcome questions and comments. We're a family-based practice, so you'll be hearing squeaks and giggles from our little ones throughout our episodes. I encourage you to follow in with your family and your loved ones and learn a new approach to integrating holistic and alternative medicine into your daily life and expanding your knowledge on various topics from the next generation of holistic healthcare providers. Follow in. Here we go.
Hi, Libby.
Libby, thank you so much for that introduction. So welcome everyone to the podcast for Optimal You. Sorry, screwing that up. So my name is Baba Bruce. That's what my friends call me. But in my healing circles or around town, you may know or heard of me as Baba Buddha. So I'm excited to be here to talk to you about this topic today with the very beautiful Heather Beebe. Many of you know her as the certified holistic health coach at Optimal You. But did you also know that you can find her because she is a speaker speaking at various holistic events around the Florida area as of lately? And you can find her talking about such subjects as her book, Forever Fresh, which is a great deep dive into how you can really begin to become mindful with your ingredient storage and how you consume food in your life and just how you live your life in general. So welcome, Heather. I'm excited to be here with you on this podcast and see where we go today.
Absolutely. It's great to be here with you. Thank you for making the time for this also. And a lot of you listeners are probably patients at Optimal You, so you may know me already. If you don't know Bruce, though, he is a certified Reiki master. He's the owner of Tranquil Transformational Healing. I have to say that slowly so I say it correctly. Tranquil Transformational Healing. Certified Reiki master. He is a Qigong instructor, which if you don't know what Qigong is, I will not describe it. I will let him describe that a later time. But I have done it and practiced it with him, and it is an amazing practice. And he's also a breathwork facilitator. And so he teaches Qigong and leads breathwork sessions at various local places in St. Augustine and Jacksonville. We'll have his information in the show notes. You can access him and learn more about what he does and how to, learn from him or work with him if you're ever interested in that, and what events he has coming up. But I'll let him tell you guys a little bit about what we're doing, what we're talking about today.
Yeah, guys. So, see as how it is 9/11. And thank you so much, Heather, for that introduction and, talking a little bit about those strange words, Qigong, because it's spelled Qi without the U. So it gets kind of confusing to people. We'll talk a little bit more about that later on. But today it's 9/11, and I'm sure just in saying that, many of you can remember where you were on this day back when that happened to our country on 9/11. I know for myself, having just gotten out of the military in the Navy, I was a rescue swimmer and a 50 cal door gunner. And one of the first things that went through my mind when the Twin Towers were hit was how soon before I'm getting recalled back into the helicopter to begin fighting for this country again, because that was something that was near and dear to my heart. And I was ready to go back. And, it was a day in our history as Americans that created trauma across the entire country, because we all felt this intense sadness, not just the first responders who were experiencing horrific things, and not just the people who lost loved ones or friends to this disaster, but all around the world, we all suffered some element of traumatic stress. And so I think it's important today that we actually kind of address this concept or this idea of trauma, and what is trauma, and how do we actually get trauma? How do we deal with trauma? And what is it that we can do, to help ourselves deal with trauma?
Yeah. And along those lines, so you mentioned 9/11, and that was an experience, like you said, that literally traumatized the entire nation. And I would even go so far as to say, to some effect, the entire world.
Yeah.
And that is a perfect example of something big that affects many, many people. On the other hand, I also want to hold space for traumas of varying degrees, right? So trauma can be massive, like something like 9/11, and it can also be something, smaller. And it's important that we acknowledge all of it, and so in regards to anyone listening to this podcast, just know that today's message is for you. It's for you and whatever level of trauma you have experienced in your life, be it something, big like 9/11, or be it something smaller. That's still significant. It still makes a significant impact in your life. And so we are holding space today for all of that and all of you.
Right. Yeah. I mean, me being a Navy veteran, I also was diagnosed with PTSD. But what I really didn't realize is at the time, it wasn't the Navy that gave me the PTSD. It was actually my growing up in a broken family dynamic and just the harshness of what it was like to be adolescents and teenagers in this world, right? And so, to understand that it was the military that exacerbated it, yeah, sure, it made it more difficult for me to handle it, and my PTSD would show up as anger management issues, where I would have these extreme fits of rage. But yeah, it didn't come from my time in the military. It didn't come from one traumatic experience. It came from a lifetime of youthful, harsh experiences that I would, undergo. So, yeah.
So I like that you touch on that, because you talk about, things like a broken family and, being an adolescent and different challenges that you faced in that time. I'm curious, how did you go from that stage of your life to where you are now as someone who is leading breathwork sessions, and literally you are a healer? You are a healer of people, an energetic healer, if you will. Would that be accurate? And so I'm curious how you went from your own story of trauma and your story around that to literally helping people heal from exactly those type of experiences.
Yeah, I mean, if I'm going to talk about my story, I guess, it's important for me to give you a little bit of a background where I come from. I'm a country boy from Montana. I grew up in the big mountain ranges of the Rocky Mountains and Big Sky. Parents got divorced. My mom moved to Colorado, so then I grew up in the Rocky Mountains of Colorado. And then she moved back to Jackson Hole, Wyoming. So then I kind of had my adolescent kind of rambunctious years in Jackson Hole, Wyoming. But I joined the Navy right out of high school, went out to see the world. I didn't want to hurt people, so that's why I became a rescue swimmer, so I could save people. But really when my journey started to take place was when I got out of the military and I went to UCLA. UCLA, I got my degree in theater, film, and television, and there I started falling in love with theater. I fell in love with this idea that I was a misfit, that I was somehow different than everybody else, and I felt at home amongst all the other misfits, right? And that led me to really loving this idea of being our most authentic selves. So then I became an acting coach and teaching other actors how to bring their most authentic selves to the surface. And that was really something that I've been doing for the past 20 years. And I absolutely love helping other human beings tap into what is their authentic, vulnerable, emotional truth. And it's the most beautiful thing ever. But what that did is that helped me realize that I was really interested in this, how people's emotions work and how these energies flow inside their body. So that led me to becoming an Eastern Bodyworks massage therapist. And that was absolutely fascinating because for me, I was going through a medical massage school with nurses. So I learned everything there was to know about the body, all the body systems, and especially the lymphatic system and the endocrine system, which I had no clue about, are very much tied into the meridian system, which is these energy pathways in our body where the energy flows. So I was fascinated by all this. Well, that led me to, I'm going to call it wrong the first time, Qigong, because there was this called a Qi revolution, and it was Qigong. And this was where I really got to experience for the first time how you can take what we call external Qi, which is energy all around us, right? And then harness it by doing certain very ancient practice maneuvers and movements connected with the breath, building up that energy, harnessing that energy, and then bringing it inside your body, turning it into internal Qi energy, and then you can use that for healing purposes. I started to use that into my massages. I started calling them Qigong massages, and my clients were like, I don't know what you're doing, but my body is just flowing with energy. It's incredible. So I was like, okay, there's really something to this. But really what changed things for me, and I'll backtrack to this in a second, because after that, because I now understood energy, then I started to get involved with Reiki energy. Mm-hmm. So I became a Reiki energy healer, started practicing it, started putting that into my massages, and then I went all the way with that and I became a Reiki master. But what I really want you to understand is that where my absolute transformation took place was at these Qi revolutions. Because I loved it so much, I became a Qigong instructor where I would help facilitate these events. And we had what we call the breath empowerment, which is doing something called the warrior's breath for an extended period of time. And when you do that, something happens to your autonomic nervous system. You have this incredible, spiritual awakening. It can be a euphoric, almost psychedelic experience. And it absolutely blew my mind. And from that point forth, I was absolutely hooked on breathwork as a tool for spiritual development. Side note though, it actually began for me very early on when I was at UCLA. I didn't know this, but I had this voice class where we would learn how to use breathing into our bellies so that we could have a big, full lungs full of air so that we can project our voice, giving something for the voice to carry itself on. So that when we were doing these long, soliloquies and iambic pentameter, which is what Shakespeare, when they're doing those long speeches, they're doing that. You have to have a lot of air in order to carry that long of a, soliloquy. And so I was doing these kinds of vocal exercises. And one night, before an opening night, I was going to be playing James Dean in a play called Blackwell's Corner. And so I was James Dean. I had the blonde hair and everything, and I was backstage, and I was doing my vocal exercises, doing my deep breathing, deep belly breathing, and all of a sudden my fingers started to tingle. And all of a sudden it started to tingle all the way up my arm. And then my legs started to tingle, and I started to feel light. And I almost started to feel like maybe I was going to fall over. And I almost thought, am I getting dizzy? Am I going to pass out? But I didn't. I started to buzz and vibrate. And I was like, oh my God, the ghost of James Dean is coming into my body. This is great, And I went on stage, and I was just so in character. And this was at UCLA, so there were people there who actually knew James Dean, and they came to me after that performance, and they said, I knew James Dean, and when you came onto stage, I swore to God that I saw his ghost. And I was like, oh my God, I'm hooked. So from that point forth, I started doing vocal exercises religiously all the time. And I taught all my acting students to do vocal exercises to calm themselves down before going on stage, to tap in deeper into those energetic wells of their authentic emotion. And little did I know, I was teaching and practicing breathwork.
Okay. But that was before you even really knew what breathwork was. So then it would have been later that you made that correlation of, how that of what you actually were doing without knowing it, and how it was calming you in the moment and, you know, kind of bringing you down. So I guess that makes me,
you're going to go there, aren't there?
that makes me wonder, you know, with the topic that we are talking about today of using the breath and different modalities to calm our nervous system regulation and healing, essentially. What is something that somebody could take today? If somebody was like, okay, this is what I need, I want to start practicing this. Is there something that they can start doing today to really start practicing this without a lot of knowledge or practice or time?
Yeah. I guess before we get to what they can do, I guess I do need to kind of backtrack a little bit and share, how did I discover that this was something that was going to help in the world of trauma? That's what our topic is. And, you know, I really would just be doing you listeners a disservice if I didn't come to you fully authentic and vulnerable in this story. So, you know, I had a moment where I was hitting rock bottom from, you know, choices that I had been making centered around patterns that were repeating in my life. And I found myself in jail. And luckily, I did know about my breathwork practice. And I religiously was doing my breathwork practice in the cell, because otherwise my body was shaking so uncontrollably. I was having the biggest panic attack of my life. But because I was able to keep my mind focused on my breathing practices, those panic attacks would subside, and I could actually bring myself, not knowing this is what I was doing, but I could actually bring myself back into coherent alignment, resetting my nervous system and bringing myself back into, you know, a calm, more centered state. And what's really been beautiful about that is there's actually a practice now that we use with the VA, where we go in and we work with disabled veterans, and we do something called the 9 breath method, which is 9 of these warriors breaths in a row. And I myself was able to experience that with my own PTSD when I was having my own triggers, my own episodes of, you know, fits of anger and rage, where I would do this 9 breath method, and like in the moment, I would go from a fit of anger and just literally losing control of my own emotions, to all of a sudden feeling good inside of my body. And I can tell you that I had these tears of joy because I was so grateful that whatever fears I had about the past were not with me at that moment. And whatever anger I had about some future that I was imagining, the worst case scenario, I realized it was all in my mind and I was just imagining the worst case scenario. And I had that clarity of thought in that moment. And I was like, oh my God, where has this been, you know? And so, you know, this is something that we do. We use this to help bring us back into that more kind of coherent state. And, you know, you can reset your nervous system using breathwork, what we call a biohack, basically taking you out of the sympathetic, which is the fight or flight part of the nervous system, into the parasympathetic, which is the rest and digest, where you are going to bring your immune system back online, because it shuts off when you go into the fight or flight. They're not online at the same time. It's either fight or flight and this nervous system and the immune system shuts off, or its immune system comes online and the fight or flight just is subdued for that moment. It's always available for survival purposes, but we need to learn how to shut it down and calm it down. So that's what I've been able to do and help people learn how to do. But awesome. My question is, you know, that's only part of it. So what can someone do, you know, beyond that? And that's really what we're here to talk about, right?
Yeah. So can I ask you something before I answer that?
Oh, sure.
I want to know, because earlier when we were talking before we started recording, You mentioned something about a box breath.
Yes, box breath. That's true.
And I want to know, because you had mentioned that that's fairly easy to learn. And so I'm curious if that is something you can teach our listeners right now?
Yeah, sure. Why don't we everyone if you're listening on, the podcast or whatever, if you're watching the video, just go ahead and sit up tall. Get up. Just imagine all your vertebrae stacking one on top of the other. You just want to feel your spine really aligned. And a box breath is a very simple breath about teaching you the fundamentals of breath work. So there's going to be an inhale, and we're going to only do it for 4 seconds. And then there's going to be what we call a breath hold, where you're just holding your breath. It's called breath retention. And we're only going to do that for 4 seconds. And then we're going to exhale for another 4 seconds. Now, can you imagine? We're going to hold our breath at the bottom for another 4 seconds, right? So it creates a square or box, right? Now, here's the thing. When you are emphasizing the inhale, you are going to cause the heart to begin to pump faster. It's going to cause the blood vessels to dilate so that more blood can go into the extremities, because this actually biohacks into the autonomic nervous system and causes the fight or flight part of the nervous system, right, which is the sympathetic, right? It causes that to come online. And when that happens, the body's going to shut down all the energy for the internal body functions, and it's going to send all that blood and all that energy into the extremities, as well as up into the brain, so that you become hyper acute, very, very acute. If you think of like an animal running from danger, like a deer, like it perks up, right? Smells danger, hears danger, sees danger, gone. Has all that energy in its muscles to be able to run, right? Same thing as a mother can use to lift the car off of her child. So that's when it is inhale emphasized. Then we hold the breath. Then when it's exhale emphasized, now it's just the opposite. Now we are biohacking into the other side of the autonomic nervous system, which is the parasympathetic nervous system. This is going to cause the heart to slow down, constrict the blood vessels. It's going to bring that blood back into the body, into the internal functions. All that energy is going to go into the internal body functions, and your immune system is going to kick into high gear, and you're going to be in that more restful state. Such as an animal, once it's escaped danger, it'll feed on some grass, it'll bed down, and it'll rest and digest, right? So the box breath. We're going to go ahead and take a deep breath in, and I'm going to count us through. It's going to go 1, 2, 3, 4 on the inhale, 1, 2, 3, 4 on the breath hold at the top, 1, 2, 3, 4 on the exhale, and then 1, 2, 3, 4 on the bottom. We're going to do this only 3 times, and I want you to notice how you feel right now, and then I'm going to ask you again how you feel when we complete. Okay, so here we go. Go ahead and inhale, breathing in. 2, 3, 4, hold. 2, 3, 4, and exhale. 2, 3, 4, and hold. 2, 3, 4. Again, inhale. 2, 3, 4. Hold. 2, 3, 4. Exhale. 2, 3, 4. Hold. 2, 3, 4. One more time. Inhale. 2, 3, 4. Hold. 2, 3, 4. Exhale. 2, 3, 4. Hold for the last time. 2, 3, 4. Now just return to normal breathing. Feels different, right?
Yeah, I can see how that would help somebody in a moment, like in maybe a moment of high stress or anxiety, right, or just needing
that just reset your nervous system.
Yeah.
That brings you into more coherent alignment with all the rest of your body functions, which is homeostasis, which is what our body wants to return to. So anytime we can use the breath as a tool to remind our body, hey, it's safe to go ahead and return to homeostasis, the body is going to align right back to that, because that's where it wants to be most of the time. But the work doesn't just stop with breath work, and that's actually why we're here today. So because trauma is just a trigger, right? And it's a trigger which is actually showing you a symptom to something that is actually much more of a deeper root cause. So when someone is experiencing, a trauma or a trigger, that's your body just trying to let you know that there's something that you are not dealing with that we need you to look at. So therefore we are going to trigger you to pay attention to this moment, right? And so that's really what we're here about, right? What is it that someone can do other than the breath work, right? Because that's one tool to help them come into, a more whole-rounded being.
Yeah, well, that's how I got into health coaching to begin with, was my own journey with experiencing traumas and kind of finding myself in an emotional low, where my emotional health was very, very neglected, and it began to take a toll on my physical health. So I began to not be able to work out, not, eat as well as I always had, because there were so many parts of my well-being that were out of balance. And it's like I had to take a step back and start kind of taking care of those my internal health and well-being, my spirit, my mind. And that was my first experience realizing how all aspects of health and wellness are connected. So physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual all affect each other. And it was the first time I realized that it didn't matter how much I was working out, how good I was eating, when I wasn't taking care of my emotional, mental, and spiritual health, I wasn't healthy. And it was that emotional crash, if you will, that kind of brought everything to a halt and showed me this isn't going to work. It doesn't matter how good a shape you're keeping your physical body in when you're not addressing the traumas that are lying underneath, when you're not addressing the root of the issue. All those workouts and all that healthy food, that's just a Band-Aid for everything underneath. And I had to go through my own journey of healing. And that's why in my work now as a health coach, I am so passionate about getting to that root issue. And a lot of clients, when they're in session with me, will say this feels like I'm sitting in a therapist office because of the things that we end up talking about. And it is all related to health and wellness. Health and wellness is so much more than just diet and exercise. Those parts are important. And yes, we need to integrate those parts. But if we are leaving out the mindset and the spirituality, we're missing a whole piece that's going to bring everything together cohesively.
Right. And it's interesting how, you were talking about certain behaviors that, we kind of repeat, that, that is what trauma leads to, because it leads us to do these certain behaviors that is a form of coping with those triggers or with those emotional moments. And they create these behaviors that are a distraction from the symptom. They're a distraction from us doing the work, right? And so that can be things such as, smoking weed or smoking cigarettes or excessive drinking or sex or drugs. It's a multitude of things, but it can also be like comfort foods. It's just the things that we like to eat because it feels good to I'll admit, like my crutch is Rocky Road. Like it's a comfort food. I know it is, So it's interesting to understand that there's certain behaviors that we have that really they're just a distraction from allowing us to really come into awareness with what our body, again, is trying to signal us that it's time for us to look deeper into what is the root cause. What am I, ignoring? What am I not dealing with?
Yeah, you are spot on with that, because ironically, when we are experiencing an emotional time or a triggering time or some kind of struggling emotionally, we tend to crave those foods that are actually going to heighten the struggle that we're in. So we tend to crave the sugary foods. We crave the, salty, crunchy, highly processed foods and the caffeine, the alcohol, and those things are actually going to have an adverse effect on our health and well-being. They're not going to, we turn to them as a form of soothing, right? That they are what we call our comfort foods. And we all have different ones. And, but what we don't realize is what we are turning to as our source of comfort is actually going to only make our situation worse. So for example, if it's caffeine, some people tend to, overload on caffeine, which is overstimulating for the nervous system, and it wreaks havoc on our adrenals and causes anxiety. So if you're somebody that tends to struggle with anxiety and you load up on the caffeine, it's only going to make that worse. Or sugary drinks and sugary foods, you're going to have that high and then you're going to have that crash, right? And it's wreaking havoc on your blood sugar. And when you have that crash where your blood sugar crashes, so does your mood. So if you're somebody who, you're already in an emotional time or a time when your triggers or your trauma is being, expounded on, the sugary foods is going to bring you down even lower. And same with processed foods and all of that. So to your point of when it comes to nutrition, this is why if our nutrition is being neglected, our mood will suffer, our life will suffer. The way we handle stressful moments in our day, that will suffer, right? We're not going to show up as regulated and as in control as we want to. And then we're going to think, we're going to blame it on our circumstances. We're going to blame it on, well, this person did this and this situation caused this. And so much of it can be controlled by what we literally are taking in to our bodies, the food that we're eating, but also the activities that we're engaging in, the way we are feeding our body and the way we are feeding our mind. And I could talk on this for hours, but it's all correlated.
It is absolutely correlated. But you know what? The thing is, I want you all to understand and hear this when I say this, that it is not your fault. Mm-hmm. That I need you to understand from a neuroscientific, perspective, that there is an actual scientific reason why we keep craving those certain foods, why we keep doing those addictive behaviors, and why we keep doing, the sugar that causes us to have the crash or the caffeine that causes us to have more anxiety. And it's because whenever we do these certain behaviors, we get what's called the dopamine hit. And dopamine is just a neurotransmitter that our body releases that gives us a good feeling, right? So when we get that good feeling, on a subconscious level, we're going to want to go back and drink the coffee, chug the soda, because we're going to get that dopamine hit again. Never mind the fact that afterwards we're going to crash and we're going to feel anxiety and we're going to feel, low and depressive and all that other stuff. It doesn't matter, because what happens is the dopamine is a drug. It's a chemical. And when that chemical gets released into the body, we become accustomed to it and it creates what's called an addiction loop. Mm-hmm. So then we are then craving the actual behavior, not for the sugar, not for the caffeine, but for that dopamine hit. And so then what can happen is we actually become addicted to a behavior that we don't even like, mm-hmm. because we don't like, the crash, right? But it's because of that dopamine addiction that we become addicted to. So when that happens, what we need to do is we need to figure out some way to break that cycle. And that's where you absolutely need to take responsibility for your actions. And this is what's so great about you guys, is how are you helping people to learn how to break that cycle?
Yeah. So we have a number of ways that we work with people. that involve obviously diet, nutrition, exercise, different therapies that we provide in office, supplements. There's a number of treatments that we provide to assist. And what I personally help people with is, again, getting to the root of that behavior, right? So we can help with diet and nutrition and exercise all day long. But if we aren't getting to the root of that, we're still just putting a Band-Aid on it. So that's where I help in my regular sessions with people, is tracing that behavior back. And I want to emphasize something here. To your point earlier, where you said this is not your fault. This is literally a response to a chemical reaction in your body. And so there is science, right? This is scientific. This is not
Absolutely.
just something's wrong with you. And I want to take that same approach to when I talk with somebody about tracing that behavior back, getting to the root of that behavior. It's never, ever from a place of judgment or criticism. And especially with yourself, like when you are doing that work of getting to the root, what is the story behind this behavior? Why have I formed this behavior in the first place? It's not because I want to eat all the sugary foods. It's not because I want to eat all the highly processed foods. What was the event that happened in my life that caused me to engage in this behavior? And I guide people there in our sessions through a lot of compassion and curiosity, right? And those are the two words that I repeat often, is exploring. It's important that we explore those deeper parts of our habits with so much compassion and curiosity. And anytime the exploration takes a nasty turn and we start to talk down to ourselves, or think negatively about ourselves and think, what is wrong with me? Why can't I kick this? We have to bring it back to that compassion and have so much compassion for that part of us that at one time turned to this behavior as a coping mechanism. At some time, whatever event was going on in our life, that behavior, which we have now deemed as unhealthy, it served us in some way. Mm-hmm. And it is okay to accept that. And it is actually important to accept that and recognize it as something that served us for a time. And now we get to make a different decision. Now we get to let that go and choose something else. So
how do you choose something else?
It's like
curious minds want to know. What is something, I was saying basically, like, curious minds want to know, like, how do we replace that particular behavior,
Yeah. So it's like, I like to use the analogy of a child that is playing with something that's dangerous. Let's say they pick up a pair of scissors, okay, and they're playing with a pair of scissors. We don't just yank those scissors out of their hand and say, you can't have that, and leave them crying because they have nothing to play with. We take the scissors and we replace it with something that's safer and more healthy. So we have to treat ourselves with the same kindness and compassion that we treat that child with, okay? We have to not just take away all the things that we've come to depend on and leave ourselves feeling, empty, lonely, whatever, depressed. It has to be a gradual process. And this is why in our program, we do what I call baby steps. We have to baby step our way through these changes. And we can set those long-term goals, but we can't just start working on we're not going to start meeting those goals all tomorrow. We have to start taking those baby steps and gradually replacing the unhealthy, unsafe behaviors with the healthier, safer behaviors. In essence, that's what we're doing.
Yeah, I mean, and that's exactly what happened with, this one client of mine in the Magnetic Breath Mastery course, which is actually happening in 2 weeks. Plug there. No, he came to the course because he wanted to get some help with, stopping smoking weed, because he was like a habitual weed smoker. And people do, they come to us, like I said, because they want to stop smoking cigarettes, or they want to stop drinking, or stop some kind of addictive behavior, right? And so that's really what we've done, is in the time that it took him to go through the course, which was a 3-month course, he doesn't smoke weed anymore. He was able to replace that habit, right, of smoking weed, which gave him that high, right? But it was also giving him a dopamine hit, right?
Yeah.
So we replaced that behavior with now a practice of breath work. Now he's getting that natural high, which, me personally, I've smoked weed and I've done breath work. There is no high better than the high that you get from your own breath. We call it in the breath work world, getting high off your own supply, because you are now getting a natural, function of your body to reset your nervous system, to bring you back into that coherent alignment. So you bring your body back into homeostasis, like I was talking about earlier. And yet you're still getting that dopamine hit because you've replaced the behavior with a new behavior that gives you the same dopamine hit. And now he's free from smoking weed.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful story. So you talked about your magnetic breath mastery course. Aside from your courses and programs, that people will have that information in the show notes, and people can find you through there and see all that you do. But what are, let's say, the top 3 things that somebody can take away from this today and start implementing in their life to make changes today?
That's a great question, really. Because when you think about, okay, what are the top 3 things? But there really is more than 3 things. But like you said, baby steps. So let's just start with 3 things, and then maybe you can build upon that. Now, understanding the breath work is the key to everything that I do, because it is about getting you into that mindful state. As far as I'm concerned, breath work is the gateway into mindfulness, into the meditative states. But if I were to say the first 3 things that you can do every day to really set yourself on the right path, is number 1, the very first thing that you do when you wake up in the morning is make sure that your thoughts are on the things that you choose, and make sure that those thoughts are on something positive. And the way to do that is think about your child or your dog, or for me, it's my niece. The laughter of my niece, instantly I have a smile. This is the moment you realize that you are no longer dreaming, that you are awake. Don't start thinking about your day. Don't grab your phone and get on your distraction device. Don't even get out of bed. Don't even open your eyes. Just start thinking about positive things. If you do that for 10 seconds, after those 10 seconds, you can start thinking about things that you are grateful for in your life. I think about my health. I think about the strength of my legs. I think about the fact that I can walk. Some people can't even walk, right? Think about the fact that I can breathe in this deep breath of life for another day to live, right? I'm going to tell you a real quick story. When I went to school in Beverly Hills Playhouse in LA, I went to school with, I just forgot his name, Patrick Swayze's brother, Don Swayze. And he was a great actor as well. And of course, Patrick Swayze was too. And Patrick Swayze, came in one day and was like watching his brother perform. He's like, oh, he's the one that got, all the talent in the family. And his brother was an amazing actor. But I'm telling you this story because Patrick Swayze, when he did get, I think it was pancreatic cancer, he was dying, right? But he would wake up every day very early in the morning, and it would have to be like 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, so that he could go through all this excruciating agony of getting his digestion going just enough to where he could go and make it to the set. I can't remember what the show that he was on, but it was a series, so that he could go and do what he loved and only shoot for a couple hours before the pain was so much that he had to go back home, get some kind of calming meal, and literally go to bed so that he could wake up in a few hours to go through this excruciating agony again, so that he could get his digestion going just enough so he could go back to set and shoot for only 2 hours before he had to go home and do it again. And this is the thing that someone asked him, and it hit me like a ton of bricks. They said, why do you put yourself through this pain every day? Why don't you just, live out the rest of your days in comfort and you're wealthy or whatever, And he goes, I'll tell you. He goes, every day that I wake up and I feel that pain, I am so grateful because it means I'm still alive. It means I have one more day that I can go and do what I love one more time. It hit me again, man. So that's what you want to think about when you wake up. Grateful that you have one more day, because none of us know that we get tomorrow.
Yeah.
That you have one more day to do what you love and make it what you love. I don't care what you're doing. Do it with love. Do it the best you possibly can.
Yeah.
I know that's a long answer for number one, but yeah, start your day with gratitude. Gratitude and being your authentic self is the highest vibration there is. I know love is up there really high, but gratitude and being your authentic self is number one. Yeah. Two, so making sure that the first things you're thinking about that you are taking into your mind is positive. Two, make sure the first thing that you are ingesting into your mouth is something that your digestion doesn't have to work a lot of, spend a lot of energy to do, because our bodies have only a certain amount of energy each day, right? And every thought that you have is taking up energy. Everything that you put into your mouth is taking up energy. So if you're shoving in a bunch of pancakes and eggs and bacon and sausage, your stomach is going to have to work overtime to digest all that, and it's going to suck up a lot of your energy. And why do you think you need to take a nap after that, right? Yeah. So making sure that the first things you ingest, which is what I do with my morning mastery routine, is I eat berries, high in antioxidant, like blueberries, raspberries, strawberries. Sometimes I throw some kiwi for some color in there. But making sure, because that's already, by the time it gets to your stomach, you've already chewed it up. It's already so easy for your stomach to digest. So now your stomach is awake and it's digesting and it's not costing you a lot of energy, right? Or you can even do something like lemon water. I like to put a little agave water, honey in mine. But that is going to get your digestive enzymes going. When that hits your stomach, get your stomach going. So then when you do eat that fruit, everything is just such a smooth process. You're not expending energy. Mm-hmm. But number three, you know it's going to be, which is go back to your breath. Mm-hmm. If it's not a breathwork practice, at least do some conscious breathing to bring yourself into a mindful state. But I definitely recommend at some point in your life, learning about breathwork. If it's not from me, from another practitioner, learn how just a few simple, like the box breath that we did, just a few simple rounds of consciously controlling your breathing in the morning is going to bring you into that state where you can be mindful about the beginning of your day. And if you do that, the rest of the day you've already won, because you're going to come into those same kind of situations that are going to cause you the same kind of stress, but you are going to be aware of it. You're going to realize it doesn't affect you as much as it normally would have. And you are going to have a tool like I do, my 9-breath method, that I can take myself out of a triggered response back into that calm, centered state and be so grateful to be alive.
Love that. Yeah. Thank you for sharing.
Absolutely. I know that, you are doing this holistic healing of the people that come into your office. And we've talked a lot about how we can, recognize trauma and the things that we can do to help us, create new behaviors and things like that. But what specifically are people going to do when they come into your office and come into the Optimal You to really get started on this path of creating a better future for themselves?
First things that I have somebody do is to set 3 goals. And I encourage those goals to be 1 around nutrition, 1 around movement, and 1 around mindfulness. If we focus on those 3 areas, we're going to be hitting all the main points, and then we're going to be, diversifying our attention as we go through the program. So it's important that somebody knows their mindset and their work. Establishing some kind of mindfulness practice is just as important as eating right and moving their body. So that's why I like to encourage those 3 areas. And then what's really important as you move forward towards taking baby steps towards those goals is being very clear on your why. Why are you setting those goals? Why are you choosing those goals specifically? And really when I say getting clear on it, I mean, how is your life going to change when you meet those goals? What is going to be different? Why is it so important that you reach those goals? What's going to change in your life? And the reason it's so important to get clear on that why is because you're going to need to revisit that why very often as you begin implementing baby steps towards those goals. As life happens and things are tough and you're tempted to fall back into old behaviors, we're going to always need to come back to that why. And then literally choosing every day, and this goes along with what you were saying about your reason for getting up in the morning, gratitude, being grateful for life and thinking, about all the positive things that are happening in your life. This is a choice. When we are working towards changing habits and establishing a new lifestyle and reaching goals, it's a choice every day how we respond. So asking yourself every day, what can my response be today towards those goals? And it doesn't have to be something that we talked about in this session. It doesn't have to be, something that I or your therapist or whoever recommended for you. It's literally getting up every day, checking in with yourself. Where are you on the track of reaching your goals? Those goals that you have set for yourself, where are you in response to those goals, and how can you respond to them today? How can you show up for them today? And these can be small. These can be small responses. No response is too small. So it can be, I need to drink more water today, or I'm going to take the stairs instead of the elevator, or I'm going to sit in silence in the sunshine and close my eyes and just breathe for 5 minutes. These don't have to be big things, but the more you start implementing those small responses on a daily basis, that is where change happens.
Yeah. And, speaking of making small changes on a daily basis, I see in the corner there, it looks like we got your book, which is, a great resource for doing just exactly what we've been talking about all day today. So let me ask you a question. How can people find that book?
Yeah. I'm surprised you noticed that, but yes, it is there.
Kind of tucked away in the corner there.
It's tucked away in the corner. So my book is called Forever Fresh, and it is a guide to masterful ingredient storage. So it talks about, some of the best methods for storing your fresh produce. To make it last longer, get more life out of it. So you're not, throwing away bags of brown, soggy vegetables from your fridge.
What's one way that we can store something like, I don't know, like my avocados are always going bad. So.
Okay. So this isn't trauma related, but I'll go ahead and answer it. Avocados, I like to store them in water in the fridge. So you're right. Putting them in water. So let them ripen on the counter first. Mm-hmm. And then once they are ripened to your satisfaction, you transfer them to a container of water and keep them in the fridge. And they're going to last. I've had them last for weeks that way, submerged in water. Yeah. And then same thing if you, let's say you use half an avocado and, the other half tends to go brown pretty quickly. Put it back in water upside down. So the cut side face down in water back in the fridge, and you're going to get a couple days out of it. So you'll take it out and be able to use it. But so, yeah, if you, so I touch on ingredient storage in my book, and I touch on just being more mindful with our nutrition and our food choices, and mindful with our cooking, not just mindful with our eating, but mindful with our cooking and with our meal prep, and even mindful with our grocery shopping. So my book is called Forever Fresh. You can find it on Amazon, and we'll have the link for that in the show notes as well. But how can people find you and all the amazing things that you're doing?
Well, first of all, I want to thank you guys for having me on your podcast today. This is a great opportunity to be able to, talk to your listeners about things that are near and dear to my heart, which is, wholeness of being, really, and using breathwork as a tool for that. But you can find me as Baba Buddha. That's my healing alias, on YouTube, Facebook, and then on Instagram and TikTok. I'm Breathe with Baba Buddha. And I have a milkshake, which is all the links to all my programs and things. And that is msha.ke. So M, almost like M shake, / breathe W Baba Buddha. So breathe with Baba Buddha. And
awesome.
I look forward to helping you guys in whatever way that I can. Thank you.
Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Optimal Use Podcast. Be sure to like and subscribe. We hope to see you guys again shortly. Have a wonderful day.